All right.
All right, how's that?
Looks great.
All right, great. Thank you so much for inviting me today. I wish I was down there with all of you. I'm coming to you from Los Gatos, California. We're just south of San Francisco. I want to kind of talk about my journey with AI. I'm the CTO at Metazoa, and I've used it at this point a lot to implement product. And I think there's a lot of interesting things I learned along the way I want to share that can be helpful to you. But we're really all about org management, about keeping an org healthy and not just discovering technical debt, but also removing it from the org and have a suite of tools for that. And AI really just seems to dovetail into what we're doing. And I've been around for a long time. I wrote the first App Exchange app back in 2005, and I've been watching AI for a long time. But about 2 years ago, I noticed my kids were now writing their school papers with it, and I thought it's really come a long way, and especially with GPT version 3.5, I think it really was improved, and now we're up to 4. Looking at the OpenAI product line, and I think Anthropic Claude and Google Bard are some other interesting ones to look at. I'll mainly be talking about OpenAI today. So one big issue has been the token limits. And that's kind of how many words you can give to the language model and then how many words it can give you back. And, ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo has got about a 16K window that you can send up to 16K, and it can return back up to 16K, but the total request and response has to fit in that window. And now we have GPT-4 Turbo, which has a 100K request, but then the response can only be 4K at most. And so that's a really big difference. So think about it. If you're saying, look at this flow and tell me what it does, then that'll fit. The flow will probably fit in the 100K window, and the response of 4K for the description is probably good. But if you're saying, let me describe a flow and you build the flow for me, that might not work because the flow itself might be bigger than 4K. So that's kind of where we are today. It's an issue that you need to be aware of. And the limits keep going up. So we'll see where we end up with all that. So one of the big things a language model can do is to predict the next word. And so if you say, I have the next word might be dream. But the way this works is it not only looks at the next word, it looks at the next word in the context of the entire sentence. And so this is the transformer technology that Google developed that really made AI so much better. But you need to kind of think about that, that's how your prompt is going to run, is it's very good at predicting the next thing to say that fits in the context of everything else that's been said. So steering is really important because of that. So the direction that you start your prompt out in, it's going to kind of continue going in that way as it predicts the next word and predicts the next word. So, you are a helpful metadata API expert who knows Salesforce best practices. It's going to get you a lot of useful prompting from metadata. You are a drunken pirate. You'll go off in a totally different direction, but it'll work. Might be entertaining. And so the API has a dialectical design. And so I kind of think of, Socrates there, where he would ask the great question of the day, and then the student and the teacher would go back and forth debating this question. That's kind of how OpenAI has been designed. And this was a change in the 3.5 model where they're going to ask a context question that sets the stage, and then there's going to be a question and an answer and a question and an answer. And this really brings up a capability that we use a lot called few-shot learning. And I'll show you what this is, but few-shot learning enables a pre-trained language model to generalize over new categories of data. And that's a really, really important capability when you're looking at the practical use of AI. And I'll hopefully show you some of that. So in my experience, there's really kind of two different ways people use AI. So one is you can ask it questions on stuff it knows a lot about. So for example, ChatGPT knows a lot about Apex classes. You can just say, write me an Apex class in cold, it'll do it. We're really more interested in uh, giving the model a puzzle and all of the pieces and having it solve the puzzle. And that's to solve really practical questions that maybe the model's not that familiar with. And so if you look at kind of what's happening today with Salesforce and with Einstein, they're really all about, how can your admin enable your salesperson to write better emails or do things like that as an end user. I'm very interested in AI to help the admin to do the things that they need to do to manage their org and in fact transform that org in any way that they need to transform it, which is a really interesting new capability we just haven't had before. Just to give you an example, so we have great technical debt tools, and so we can tell you, this email template has not been used in the last 2 years, or this email template is not hooked up to anything else that could launch it, so it's technical debt. But now we can tell you this email template's written poorly and it violates your corporate guidelines for external communications, and the colors are wrong on it, and it's got merge field errors. So that's really different. It's a qualitative difference in what we can do versus just technical debt, which is really all about usage. And I think it's really interesting to see that. This slide's about overcoming token limits. That's a big deal. How you figure out how to use AI in chunks to take down an entire org, to transform an entire org, to quantify or to qualify assets in an org, which is another interesting capability that's out there. So in my work with our Snapshot product, which is an org management product, I've integrated AI in a whole bunch of different places, about 10 different places in the product. Now, I'll just show you a few of those, but one of them was writing SOQL filters. So SOQL filters, you can be the most seasoned developer and you still have to go check their docs to make sure your SOQL filter's working correctly. I'm sure you've been there. AI is great at it and does it just effortlessly. Another is just explaining Apex, just very simply, and explaining all of the different metadata assets. So in our impact analysis reporting, you can just double click on any metadata asset and say, explain it to me. And AI is really, really good at that, especially if it has the documentation along with the actual asset. It can really do a great job of explaining. Explaining deployment errors. If you've ever done metadata deployment org to org, some of the errors are just beyond obscure and hard to understand. But if you give it, the metadata asset that caused the error, a description of the asset, and the actual error, AI can do a great job of explaining deployment errors. And we've got a intelligent search product which lets you interactively talk with an agent about assets in your org, and it's really strong. A lot of people have these search capabilities, but I think the most interesting thing we've done is Metadata Studio. And Metadata Studio is a prompt engineering platform for admins. And what it does is it lets you write prompts that can transform your org into something else. And what do I mean by that? I mean, it can enrich your org in terms of descriptions, in terms of junction objects that connect things, in terms of better metadata, in terms of security. It can classify things. Imagine being able to go through your org and be able to classify every asset with regards to security and compliance and administrative capabilities. That's kind of game changing. There's never been a way to do that before. So that's really the type of thing you could do with Metadata Studio. One of the interesting things about it is it's integrated with Salesforce coming and going. So you can pull metadata assets and data records out of the org, transform them, analyze them, and then put them back into the org. And so that's where the transformational capability comes out. All right, so without further ado, let me actually show you all this stuff running live here. Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah, and Bill, just to let you know, if I ask for a pause, it's just because our screens keep timing out over here. So just in case I chime in, I want to make sure we
Okay.
catch it.
Okay. Um, okay, so this is our snapshot product, and these are all the items in blue are connected to Salesforce orgs, and you take a snapshot of the org, and that's why we call it snapshot. The items in green are developer projects that are connected to Git, or there's Salesforce DX projects available on the desktop. And so once you get to this point, you can right click any snapshot item from an org, and we've got documentation reports, optimization reports, and security reports. So those are kind of the big three for us: is optimization, documentation, and security. And then you can right click on one of the, so you can connect these items with these arrows. And if you right click on one of the arrows, you can deploy metadata, you can migrate data sets, you can do all other types of things like that. So just for example, let's say that I was going to move a data set from health demo to user stories. And I needed to pick some assets here, and I can pick them with filters or however I want to pick them. But let's say I want to pick them with Sokal, and I could create a filter, and I could say something like small technology companies. And it's going to know that I want an industry equals technology and number of employees less than 100. So that just shows you how easy it is for an admin now to just generate Sokal filters with common language. And I find myself, I'm a developer, but I find myself using this all the time. And then, of course, you can go on and build your data set. And then with Migrate, you can then move that data in a connected set of data to another org. Let me give you another example. So here's, let's say we're looking at Apex code quality. This will generate some really nice reports, and you can go through all of these different suggestions. This is all generated with PMD. So that's kind of the old way of doing it. The new way of doing it is to just say, explain this Apex class. And this will bring up OpenAI. And for example, we can just create a functional spec for this Apex class. So this is really useful if you're not necessarily a developer, but you need to know what that Apex class did. And so hopefully the OpenAI is going to be running quick enough for me today.
Okay, we're having a lag on our end too.
Yeah. So anyway, this has got a functional spec and best practices and some other capabilities. Come on, OpenAI. Actually, the delay is something worth talking about. You know, it's if you're really hoping to use AI in stream in a conversational manner, that can be an issue because of the some of the delays that you can get. Anybody know a joke?
No, this is pretty cool though. This is outlining what's going on. Yeah.
There it is. So, and then now it's written you a functional spec for that class. And super, super helpful. So let me show you just a couple other things here. Let's see. Oh, so here's a good one. So let's say you're going to do a deployment between this Salesforce DX project and this org. You can right click and say deploy metadata. And you can then find the assets that you want to move over, and you can move those, into your create job list over here at right. And then you can go to the deploy window and try to deploy those, and you'll get an error message. Good luck with that error message. It's just hard to understand, but now you can right click and say explain it, and it brings in AI. I'm tempting the gods again here. And it'll not only tell you what the error was about, it'll tell you how to fix the error. So that's really, really cool, especially if you're doing deployments. You can be a developer, you can be an admin, and this is really, really helpful. So I want to show you a little bit more of a deep dive though on Metadata Studio. And I think this is interesting kind of, no matter what your, no matter, let's see, some of these windows are kind of in the way here. Anybody know? Oh, there I go. Okay, I've collapsed it. So when this comes out of the box with over 100 prompts that are pre-built, and they're all things that are useful for admins to do. So for example, account and opportunity descriptions. So this will, here's the prompt, and you can see there's few shot learning involved. So there's an example question and an example answer. So the example question says, analyze this account and opportunity information, and it's the account with your opportunities and opportunity line items, everything connected to the account. And then say, create a new description element for each record and improve any existing descriptions where possible. And then here's the example answer, just shows this is what I'm hoping to get out of this, is I'm going to get these same records back with the actual description element added. And so when you run this thing, you see it says select an account, and see this little blue circle right over here, that means it's required. So this is it's kind of a long explanation for something that's really simple. So there's an example question that tees it up. You still there?
Yeah, sorry, we're with you.
Okay, no worries. So there's an example question that shows you, here's the type of question I want to ask. And then there's an example answer. Here's the type of output I want you to give me. And now you can ask the real question and require the end user to get an account. So long story short, you just select this thing and hit the submit button. And now it will let you look through your accounts, select one, and here we go. And it actually generates the description for all of those accounts. And now we can go to, let's see.
Just this is description of metadata, not actually record.
Yeah, looks like.
Yeah,
So
this
this
is an actual data record. And then you can go into prompt automation and do that to all of your accounts and update the descriptions on all of your accounts, opportunities, and opportunity line items, which your sales guys aren't writing. And so and let me just give you another example here. Here's another good one, Apex class dictionary. So what this says is, I'm going to give you an Apex class and instructions to create a dictionary that shows me all of my external connections, all of my methods, my public methods, and my public classes. And then here's my actual class, make me select a class, and I can run the prompt, select a class. And here we go. And I taught it to give me the output in HTML. And so now what I can do is I can go to prompt automation. I can do this with all of my classes, and I can generate a report. And let me just show you the report here. So here's my report. And so now that's a comprehensive class dictionary that documents every class, every method, and it can be in whatever format I want. So you could take this document and use it in a prompt. And then when you're asking it to write Apex, it knows everything. Or you could just give this document to your dev team. So is this making sense?
So
Okay, let me show you a couple other prompts here. So
Great to hand a typewriter to get started on.
Absolutely. So here's a good one, just to create an Apex class, a test class given a class. So we've got best practices here, which I think are like off of Trailhead or, Salesforce bin or something. Here's what's interesting about this. You can put your corporate policies into this engine and generate whatever you want in accord with those policies. So like your account and opportunity descriptions, maybe you want that to focus on sales process or on competitors or something like that. For the first time really ever, your corporate policies have teeth and can implement the way your Salesforce org is. And I think that's just really interesting. Because people always have policies, but nobody's following them a lot of times. Let me give you another example of that. So create flow node descriptions. So here the example question says, create a description for the flow and for every element in the flow. Here's an example flow in my example question with no descriptions. And my answer is that same flow with good descriptions written.
Hey, Bill,
And
just
so
hold on for a second. Sorry, I
Yeah.
just want to make sure these guys can see this part. We're back. Okay, we're good.
Okay, good. So then I've got documentation. So this documents the element names in a flow. So one of the things a snapshot can do is it can auto document any metadata asset with the all 10,000 of them. And so here's my example flow, which I need to select. So when I run this, I select a flow. And you can see here's the descriptions. Well, that's an input assignment, record lookup descriptions. And they're absolutely beautiful machine written descriptions that look at the entirety of the flow and, are really nicely done. I was surprised that they're actually the ones OpenAI did were much better than my descriptions I found along the way. So now you can go to prompt engineering and you can make changes to that prompt. So you could change the example question, you could change the example answer, or you could go to prompt automation and automate that prompt for all of your flows. Now, in this case, you're going to create a developer project in Salesforce DX. And now that project is right here. And now we go into the deployment tools. Here's my flows. I just updated all the descriptions. And here's the actual descriptions that I changed. You can check them into whatever the differences are. You see that this is another description on the right. The one on the left is a detailed description. So then you can then decide if you want to deploy those, which ones you want to deploy, and then you can go to the deployment tools and actually deploy them. The other thing you can do is just save that as a job list for your release management team. So let's say you're an admin, you've enhanced all of your flows, or you've discovered a bunch of technical debt. You don't have to actually deploy it. You can just save it as a job list for the release management team. All right. Is this making sense so far? Any questions?
Yeah, there's questions.
How much you can snoop in managed package? How much useful things comes from managed package elements in metadata?
So yeah, so we can analyze a managed package with all of the detail of an unmanaged package. You can look at the package itself, or you can look at the customizations of the package after deployment, when the customizations from the package appear in the unmanaged assets. You can look at them there, or you can just look at the actual package. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm just wondering on actual, because of IP protection, they don't give us everything open and some things are just read-only. And Apex, even you cannot see anything there. I just was wondering if you ever tried to apply all of this to managed package and what's coming back.
Yeah. So when you take a snapshot of your org, let me go to a more detailed snapshot. One of the things you can do is grab any and all of your selected packages. And then they become part of the snapshot. And then you can absolutely operate on all of those just as if they were, actual unpackaged assets. We cannot help you with the hidden Apex and things like that, of course. We're just using the Salesforce API.
Thank you.
All right, so let me show you one other thing while I've got you here. There's also intelligent search, which is our artificial agent. And we've done a lot of experimentation with this. What we found is if you use vector databases and things like that, you can get in trouble in that the token limits are quite small. The Salesforce objects are quite large. And bad grounding data is worse than no grounding data, is what we kind of discovered. If you make a mistake in getting that grounding data, then bad, all kinds of hallucinations and weirdo, essentially the AI is answering a question that you didn't ask. And so what we've done is we've made it so that if you don't, you can turn off your grounding data, automatic dynamic grounding data, and we'll find it dynamically for you with a vector database. But we also give the option to just select the thing you're interested in. And that makes a really big difference. So I've selected a custom object here. So I'm saying create a CSV report of fields versus labels and types. So one of the things I haven't talked much about is markup fencing. And you're going to see it here in this example where, how do I know that this is a table, but other things are code and other things are XML or JSON? And it's all with markdown fencing. And I suggest if you get into advanced prompting, you take some time to look at that. It's super useful. You can pass data types back and forth between the AI, and it's just a super useful thing to do. And you can, do all kinds of different data types and make them do different things. So let me give you another example here. Right, and write an Apex class that creates randomized test records.
Interesting point. I think you got a typo there in class. How does it handle typos?
It does great because it just glosses right over it and kind of knows what you mean anyway. It's amazing. It's amazing, the language models, what they can do. Although one thing I will say is if, like, for example, you have lots and lots of typos, the language model may start to think, well, this is really about spelling. Or another thing I've seen is if you're making errors in your markdown fencing, it'll echo the same errors back to you as if, oh, you want to do it this way. And but anyway, you see here, I've got an Apex class that I just wrote, and now I can copy that. I can take this and I can export it as a picture. Everything's importable and exportable. And so how about write a see what I get here. Write a validation rule for the social security number field, which I've and here it is. Here's a validation rule that does regex on social security. And now I can deploy that or whatever. So this is interesting. It's from an admin's perspective. focused on, data or metadata. And then the question is, you've got now this super smart companion who knows everything about your org, who can, generate this work for you in an interactive way. I think it's really interesting. All right. Well, I'm going to yeah, go ahead. Maybe there's some questions.
It's a lot there.
If I do intelligent search and I have high volume data in Salesforce, they're gonna find string like URL address anywhere in database. They're gonna report how many times it's repeating their object or whatever records are, or get a report with records that are contains this in any of text fields that are available. Is this something that AI can do here?
So that's a great question. And I think here's the thing to think about. You've got a limited token limit on how much grounding data you can provide the AI. And, the biggest I've seen so far is the GTP4 Turbo at 100K. But I mean, you can have a single account that's, the account metadata might be in megabytes. So it's very limited. And so what people have done is they've tried to use vector databases that bring pieces of that information together. And vector databases work well like on a book. If you have a book and every paragraph is in the vector database, that'll work pretty well. If you have structured data, it doesn't work as well because there's a lot more nuance and importance to exactly how things are spelled and done and so on and so forth. So it's kind of a chicken and an egg problem. The language model doesn't know the question you're asking unless it has all the grounding data. And it can't find all the grounding data unless it knows the question you're asking. And so that's kind of where we, came up with this idea of just letting people select grounding data. And we also have a dynamic mode for letting it search. But to your question, one of the things we've got right on the next tab is just the ability to instantly search the entire metadata of all of your snapshots. And so in your example of looking for a URL, you'd be much better to come find it here.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I've got kind of a big one.
Sure.
How about, how secure is this? If my company's got a lot of IP that it bases everything on, the first question they're going to be is AI taking this out and it's going to get stored somewhere else we don't have control over?
Yeah, that's a great question. Something I'm the CTO here, so that's the type of thing that I worry about. So let me start with a couple things. So one is Snapshot is a client product. It operates from your personal computer to your Salesforce orgs. So first off, Metazoa does not have a cloud or a database at all. And so that is highly secure. And that's why so many government agencies and large financial institutions use Snapshot. So we can't see your data, we can't see your metadata, and you can put a network monitor on this thing and prove it. OpenAI is another enterprise service like Salesforce, and we communicate both to Salesforce and OpenAI from the desktop. And so one of the things we've done is we've given you the ability to put in your own corporate OpenAI key. And we also provide a free key if people want to use that. Or you can also turn off OpenAI everything from this point in time. You can mask your personal information and you can select your model that you want to use right here. So masking the personal information you know, Salesforce does it. I think that's why we do it. I think it's a little gimmicky in that almost all of your information in Salesforce is, you know, important. You know, if you have financial information, that's not personal. If you have trade secrets, that's not personal. I mean, what isn't important Salesforce information? And so, you know, to get finally around to your question, I think companies have to decide what they want to do. OpenAI has stated in their terms of use that they do not train on the data coming through the API, you know, enterprise functionality coming through the API. And if they did, they'd get caught pretty quickly at, you know, at that. And so, and they have all the same security certifications that Salesforce does. So I don't think that they do train on your AI data. It, of course, it's sent across the internet in, you know, highly encrypted SSL, and, you know, HTTPS transactions from this personal computer directly to OpenAI. So I think at the end of the day, I think it's something that you and your company have to make that decision. I think it is safe, and I'll give you an interesting example. I have done a bunch of fine-tuning training of language models, and it is incredibly difficult to get them to remember anything specific. They remember the pattern of data and how the relationships work, but they don't remember the actual data. And so what I was doing is you know, I had a prompt. Bill's favorite color is you know, aquamarine. And I was trying, you know, then I was asking it, what's Bill's favorite color? What's Bill's favorite color? And it really doesn't know. So part of it, I think that the customer idea is, or, you know, people think it's going to take all my Salesforce data and it's going to put it in the cloud, and then the AI is going to know everything about my Salesforce org. It doesn't work that way. I hope that helps.
Does, thanks. And I think you also brought up kind of another way to differentiate security as well. There's PII, there's HIPAA, there's IP. They all can be handled differently and separately.
Totally. And which one of those wasn't important? Here's a bee for your bonnet, though. We have a new enhancement to Snapshot coming out that categorizes, according to the things you just listed and more, you kind of can select them, every asset in your org, and then stacks them up against users with profiles and permission sets, stacks them up against who's got access to Apex, to Flow, to data. It's mind-blowing because it's the first time by machine you could really get at the issue of, for example, how do I know this user doesn't have a permission they don't need, or something that's wrong? How do I know? And so that's the type of thing that AI is now making possible. And it's really, I think it's really interesting. It's new. It's all net new. It really is.
Cool, thanks.
There's got to be some more questions.
And how can you know? How can you
Well-
know if a user has an extra permission they shouldn't have? How can you find out?
Yeah.
Or
So
it's just looking at it?
So if you categorize your Apex classes and your flows and your objects and your user permissions and the custom tabs and applications with regards to different security vectors like that, and then you can look at an individual user and say, well, based on their profile, they have access to these classes and these tabs and these flows. And based on their permission sets, they have access to these things and these other things. And then you can line up the dots. It's like, you know,
Bill froze. I want to know what that app was that he built, the very first app.
Dave's-
Did I hear that correct?
2005. Was on.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Bill, did we have you back? I think we lost you for a second.
Okay, sorry. I was just saying that then you can look at a user's permissions and see what they have access to. And then you can figure out, is one of their permissions wildly different in a different category than the others? And why is that? It might be fine, but it might not be.
Thank you.
So rather than like that old school perm comparator, you'd be like, analyze the security risks in the permission sets that exist and then find out what users are applied to, it's applied to. Is that there is?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. See if we can get, there you go. I can see you guys.
So Bill, we all really want to know, what was that first App Exchange product that you built?
Do you remember Dream Team?
Don't.
Project management?
No, I don't think we do.
No, Mark was launching the App Exchange and we said, what do you need? And he said, we need a project manager. That's how it got started.
Cool. All right. Oh. Well, if there are no more questions for Bill?
I had one more.
Oh, okay.
Bill, the grounding that we are doing, is it only on the Salesforce data or we can connect to some other systems as well to get the data from there and do grounding and then produce the results in Salesforce?
So today it's all just either in your Salesforce org or on your desktop. So you can import text, you can import data, you can import whatever you need to import, but it doesn't do it. It doesn't do it dynamically. And the place where that would be really useful, I think, is if you just had where you could just enter a URL and it would include that as grounding data. But we haven't done that yet.
Okay, okay.
Awesome. Well, Bill, thank you very much for showing this. There's a lot there to unpack. We appreciate it very much.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Thank you. Thank you. Snapshots available on the App Exchange. We do a 2-week free trial and check it out.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.